Last Friday, we were pleased to host an outstanding panelist, SHARON, who was coming to us from Maryland. She is the CEO and Director of Nutrition and Diabetes Education Center in Maryland. In episode 1 of last week, which was titled No to Diabetes, the silent killer in Black community that destroy couple sexual life, with SHARON, she helped us to define this disease, which is causing a great havoc in the Black community. We also explain that this disease is the main cause of erectile dysfunction in some men and of lack of libido in some women. And frankly, it might be said that poorly controlled or poorly treated, diabetes can go so far as to cause blindness due to a cataract. Diabetes can also destroy the nervous sensitivity of the feet and cause, in the event of an injury, an amputation of a leg. In short, it's a disease to be taken very seriously. Therefore, tonight, we will discuss in episode 2 on the prevention and treatment of diabetes, the silent killer in Black community that destroys couples' life. At the live production, Andy Martinez, and on the mic, Pastor Marcy Genebu-Boire. I am the CEO of Leadership Excellence for Women by Women, a women empowerment nonprofit that is based here in Dallas, Texas.
Precious women of valor, precious men of valor, welcome to Leadership Excellence for Women by Women talk show.
Connect, explore, transform, and uplift each other's to reach their limitless possibilities.
When did the domestic violence start in your marriage?
Immediately.
93% of juvenile victims of sexual abuse is by people they know.
Yes.
Before, I used to add it on a free software and people paid for that. Then I got better on my paid software, so I got more clients and they offered to pay more.
You don't need to go as far as fighting a woman, dating a woman, diminishing her, insulting her, humiliating her.
Non, on pensait que c'était une Américaine qui allait venir.
Les gens, dès qu'ils commencent un boulot, c'est fini, hein. C'est jusqu'à la retraite. Tu vois, ils ne cherchent pas à changer de boulot, ils ont peur.
The testimonies, the stories are just amazing.
Comment démystifier certains mythes sur l'augmentation de salaire et la promotion?
Leadership Excellence for Women by Women.
Precious women of valor, precious men of valor, good evening and welcome to Leadership Excellence for Women by Women talk show. Today, again, we are going to continue our discussion with SHARON Hawks. Good evening, SHARON. How are you?
Good evening, Pastor Mercy. I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me again.
Sure, and it's a great pleasure to continue our discussion with you. As I've announced in the title, today we are going to discuss on the prevention and treatment of diabetes, the silent killer in Black community that destroys couples' sexual life. Personally, I strongly believe more in preventive measure rather than treatment. SHARON, what is your position on that?
Oh, absolutely. I can't agree with you more. I think one of the problems in the Black community is that we tend to wait until the problem is there and then try to fix it. I have always believed if we're going to get a handle on this thing we call diabetes, which I like to call the beast, it's going to have to come from the prevention side.
Yeah, absolutely. I would like us now to see one of the top methods of preventing diabetes. I'm referring here to food portion. SHARON, what should a healthy diet include per day?
Well, we always go to what we call the healthy plate put out by the government, but I want to give a little caveat to that, right? So the healthy plate is we're looking at half of the plate fruits and vegetables, 1/4 of the plate meat, and then 1/4 of your starchy type of vegetables. So in general, that's what we're looking at. But I would actually prefer, when we're looking at diabetes, to make half of that plate all vegetables and let fruit be kind of aside to that, but not be a part of the healthy plate itself. And then we're going to talk about making sure that the meat that we choose are lean cuts, grass-fed beef, free range chickens, doing things for protein if you're a vegetarian or vegan, using beans and other things along that line. And with the starch, even if you're going to go to potatoes and rice and corn, making sure you keep it as close to nature, as close to the ground as God made it, the better it's going to be for you.
Well, you said something, Sharon, that I want to retract back on it. You mentioned that fruit could be like an addition, but not like a part of the plate. Please explain that to us. I kind of like understand what you're saying, but I want you to break it down for us.
Yeah, the non-starchy vegetables, as we would call them, that would be your all your green vegetables. Well, I wouldn't just say green vegetable because that's a misnomer, because cauliflower would actually fall into that category. We're talking the lettuce, we're talking green beans, those type things. They're what we call non-starchy vegetables. So they tend to be lower in carb and higher in nutrition. Even though fruit, trust me, I'm not saying you can't have fruit, but fruit is going to have a little bit more carbs. And by the way, carbs are the type of food source that we're going to be most concerned with when we're dealing with diabetes, because carbs are the preferred energy source of the body. So body can use them more efficiently. But hear my voice. The goal is not to cut out carbs. That is one of the biggest mistakes people make. So they will say something like, you can't have fruit, you can't have bread, you can't have potatoes. That's actually not true. It really is about the serving size and when you're actually consuming it. It's about timing and the amount more than it is the item. So it gets a little bit tricky with diabetes, because a lot of times people think, as long as I eat healthy and follow that plate method, I'm fine. Well, it's all subjective, right? Because what is a serving size for you may not be a serving size for others. So we actually look more deeper into it and actually count the carbs, actually literally quantifying how much carbs you should actually have in a meal, and not just in general.
Sure. I'm going to break this down into two sub discussion here. Number one, the food portion, but then you say something that is very critical: the time that you eat. Let's face it. In America, you have fast food running 24 hours.
Yeah.
You see car literally at the drive-thru 1 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. And here you are, Sharon, telling us the timing of when you are eating is also very critical. Please explain that to us. I know many will not be liking you, but we need to hear this.
I understand totally. Trust me, I get it, right? But here's the thing. I am convinced that fast food and the access to food 24/7 is what's literally killing us, right?
Yeah.
The goal is to really monitor how much carbs, how much protein you're taking in during the day, but cut it off by a certain time. I literally say to my patients, you should not be eating within 2 hours of bedtime. Right. And so, as you were saying, Pastor Mercy, you have people going through the drive-thru at 1 o'clock in the morning. How crazy is that? So it really is about watching those portions and also be mindful of the time that you consuming it, giving your body that rest. There are things that the body must do in the middle of the night in order to keep you healthy, certain processes it must go through in order to make sure that you stay disease-free, that it's able to keep you alert. The problem is, if you're eating in the middle of the night, it can't work on those processes.
Yeah.
And that's part of why we can't stay well. Sleep is such a big part of being well. And when you eat too close to bedtime, you're going to interfere with your sleep.
Yeah. There is a certain belief that it is better for you when you're trying to be healthy, lose weight, and maintain it, to eat before 7:30 p.m. Is that correct or not?
Okay, so let's look at it this way. That's why I make the point about 2 to 3 hours before bedtime, right? Because let's face this, some people go to bed earlier than others. I have friends who are tucked in bed at 9 p.m. and then others who are not going to bed till 11 p.m. So to say the person who goes to bed at 11 p.m. needs to cut it off at 7, not as much. But if you're going to bed at 9 or 10, you might want to cut it off by 7. So 7 is kind of that random time people have thrown out there. It really is more about what time you go to bed. So that's why I'm very specific about not eating within 2 to 3 hours of bedtime. So whatever your bedtime is, then back that up 2 or 3 hours, and that's where your cutoff is.
Okay. And then when you said to not eat 2 hours before bedtime, are you talking about like a real dinner meal or like snack? That's why I'm really trying to make sure that we are understanding this here. That discipline, because when you say that, some people may say, well, Sharon said that I can eat, at 8 o'clock since I go to bed at 10. And then, of course, they may just sit down with a big steak, with French fries, all the things that go around it, and say that Sharon said. So let's make sure that we are understanding what Sharon is saying here today.
Yeah, so, and you're absolutely right. So much of, first thing I want to say, when I say don't eat anything within that 2 to 3 hours, then really, you really need to try to push it to 3 hours if possible, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing, we're not talking about a snack. So I think people think in my mind, I'm just talking about the dinner meal. No, you cannot have a snack within that time. When we say cut off eating, that's everything. The only thing that should touch your mouth within that time before bed is actually water. Yeah, so you're right. They're not going to like me.
Okay. At least we've done our part. So, of course, Sharon, when you are hungry, you simply want to eat. Does it occur to African Americans to measure their food portion? I'm asking because, I'm from Africa. And when you talk about that, I mean, in my community, they just look at you like, you have lost your mind. So I'm going now to ask the question, do you see that same kind of reaction with the African American community?
Well, I think it's as blacks as a whole, right? We love our food. We love good food. Every kind of gathering we have, from a homegoing to a wedding to any kind of celebration, food is the center of that, right? So we have been taught to enjoy food and let it be a part of who we are. Food has almost a spiritual kind of connotation to it when it comes to food. So this idea of cutting down on portions gets really difficult for people. But the approach I prefer to take when it comes to portions is to have a look at it a different way, right? Instead of looking at, I'm going to overeat because I'm hungry, I like for them to look at the makeup of the plate itself and how food responds in the body. So I'm able to convince people that if you put certain foods together, certain food types together, it'll help to keep you fuller longer on less. So that's the approach I take versus going, stop it, you can't eat all that.
That's great. That's definitely great. So to prevent this disease, which is considered, by the way, the 7th leading cause of death in the world, it is recommended to regularly check your fasting blood sugar without having eaten, of course, even if you are in a good shape. Please tell us more about, this regular fasting blood sugar monitoring, Sharon.
So are we talking about the area of prevention or once the person has diabetes?
Let's talk about prevention first, and then once they have it.
Okay, so prevention gets interesting because we haven't discussed the issue of prediabetes, which is affecting, over 80 million Americans. So when it comes to prediabetes, this is this precursor to diabetes. So once a person is dealing with prediabetes, we really want to look a lot more closely at making those lifestyle changes, as you're saying, in order to prevent the diabetes. So fasting blood sugars, a lot of times the insurance companies are not going to cover for you using the glucose monitor unless you already have diabetes, which is crazy, right? Yeah. Because being able to monitor beforehand, you can actually see patterns and see if your blood sugar is trending up. But the fasting blood sugar, so you're talking to the diabetes specialist now. So let me tell you something that most health professionals don't know. The fasting blood sugar is a good indication of where you're starting for today, but here's the part you need to get. It's not a good indication of how you're controlling overall. The blood sugar that tells you how well you're controlling overall is to take that blood sugar approximately 2 hours after the first bite of your biggest meal. Because we want to see how your body is responding to the food you take in, and is it able to recover through the use of insulin to get your blood sugar back down to a normal level. So fasting tells us where we're starting out, so it kind of gives you an idea of if things are looking good in the beginning of the day. I love to say if your fasting is looking good, you're going to have a good day, as long as you stay on track. But don't be deceived that just because the fasting looks good, that the rest of the day is fine. That's a very big misnomer people have in the community.
Wow, this is amazing for you to say something like that, because definitely I personally didn't know that. So that's great to know. Yeah. So, Sharon, people with diabetes often have to play number games as they have to make calculation, taking into account their carbohydrate intake, food portion, and blood glucose level. Let's first look at carbohydrate intake. It is recommended to eat good quality carbohydrate in appropriate amount. Let's have that on the screen. Sharon, what are the carbohydrates and what is the direct impact on our blood glucose level?
Okay, so again, I mentioned earlier that carbohydrates are the preferred energy source of the body. So the body can use them so efficiently. That's why they have such a big effect on the blood sugar. But if you note what I said first, though, it is preferred energy source of the body. So think about the fact you don't want to throw out the thing that the body prefers the most. But because it has such a big impact on the blood sugar, you're certainly going to have to monitor how much you take in. So I'm going to throw a little wrench in what you have on this screen, Pastor Mercy.
Sure.
I actually don't like to use the term good and bad carbs.
Okay.
Because there's an indication that there are foods that are bad for you. But we know there's certain things you need to cut down on and stay away from. But when you put foods into a category and say they're bad, a lot of times people think if they consume some of it, they're horrible people. This is how my patients think sometimes, right? So I prefer to steer them towards what I call complex carbs versus simple carbs. Those are terms that are better used to kind of explain. Complex carbs, the easiest way to remember, they're the closest to nature, closer to the ground, the closest way God made it. So if let me give you an example. Apple sauce, apple juice. Which one you think is better for you?
Apple, of course.
The apple, of course, right? Just simple. So that would mean the apple is a complex carb. So the apple juice would be what? A simple carb. So that's the one you want to stay away from. The ones that are the simple carbs, they can be processed very quickly and they can spike the blood sugar very quickly. So you want to stick to carbohydrates that are complex, meaning that they're high in fiber. Fiber is the key word. Fiber is your friend. It is that miracle substance that can really change the effect of how food responds in the body. And we're not just talking about with diabetes. If you're trying to lose weight, if you're trying to feel full, you're trying to lower your your cholesterol, your blood pressure, fiber is the key. And so where fiber is going to be found in those whole foods that came from the ground. Fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, nuts. These are your complex carbs. So you do have it beautifully on that side with the fruit, the vegetables, the whole grain, high fiber fruits. But fruit would actually fall on that side. But remember, we're talking whole fruit, not the juice. The juice would go on the other side. Simply said, I tell my patients over and over again, eat your fruit, never drink it.
Wow. Oh my God. You are really bringing yourself at our level for us to understand. And this is just amazing. Last week, Sharon, we talked about what is a diabetes education center. Today, I would like us to talk about what is included in a diabetes education program. Let's have that on the screen, and then Sharon, take over, please.
So I'll go ahead as they're getting the screen up. So what is included in Diabetes Education Center? There we go. As I alluded to at the previous show, I'm a certified diabetes care and education specialist, one of the few in the entire nation. And one of the things we're able to do in the Nutrition and Diabetes Education Center is put together in very explicit ways how to control your lifestyle through diet and then also looking at the medical side of it as it relates to the diabetes. Because of my training, we can put them both together. So not only will we be talking about how to eat healthy and how to be physically active, we also go into how to monitor your blood sugar, whether you're using a blood glucose monitor where you stick your finger, or if you're using the continuous glucose monitor, the device you put on your arm or in your abdomen, how to take your medication and how to problem solve. We're able to do all that, reduce your risk of other health conditions, because understand diabetes is a condition that does not come by itself. When you see a person with diabetes, they're going to have other issues, including their weight, their blood pressure, their cholesterol level, just to name a few. So to just address the diabetes would not be doing the person a good service. So we try to address all those issues, and also how to cope with the emotional side of diabetes. I discussed in the last program of something called diabetes distress, which is basically depression in diabetes. So I take time to address that as well, and how to improve your health and quality of life. At the end of the day, what everyone wants is to live a healthy, long, and have quality of life. That is actually the goal that we start off making sure we're clear on. That's where we're going.
Absolutely, Sharon. We've talked about so many good things. We are going to take a short commercial break. Stay with us. We will get back in a few seconds. Let's now address the question of diabetes and sport. Sharon, what is the relationship between sport and our blood sugar?
There's a huge relationship. One of the things I say to every person who works with me, I say exercise, activity is not an option. It must be a part of your diabetes care plan, or you're going to always struggle with trying to control that blood sugar and ultimately your diabetes. Because what exercise and activity and sport is going to do for you is good for your heart, it's good for your blood glucose level support, and it's good for achieving and maintaining a healthy weight. All these things are going to be improved upon when you add activity into your life. So activity is absolutely a must. And if I have to add something to it, that here's a little addition coming from the diabetes specialist that you may not get on another level. The type of exercise that is most important for the person with diabetes or pre-diabetes is actually resistance training, strength training. This issue, something we call insulin resistance, which is actually the hallmark to how diabetes develop. Exercise is one of the few things that can actually reduce insulin resistance and thereby improving your blood sugars. So women, I say to a lot, don't just get on the treadmill or go for a walk or go for a run. Pick up some exercise bands, some little light hand weights, do some light push-ups or something that actually causes resistance to the body if you really want to get the best outcome. And by the way, the more muscle you have on your body, the more toned you are, the higher your metabolism, which makes it easier to lose weight too as well.
Wow. Thank you so much, Sharon, for explaining that, because definitely, many of us, especially women, we may not feel like going to the gym and thinking like, well, just a 15-minute walk will be fine. Speaking about sport, how often should somebody with diabetes do sport a week, and how often and how long?
Okay, so I'm going to give you what the medical community say, and then I'm going to tell you what Sharon says, right? So the medical community says you should get about 180 minutes of activity a week, which comes out to about 30 minutes, 5 days a week, correct? And then the other part of that, you need about 2 days of resistance or strength training, where for about 15 to 20 minutes where you're using light weights or something along that line. Now, here's what I say. All of that is correct, but I try not to come from that level in the beginning for a lot of people, particularly if they've never exercised. And so imagine someone telling you when you've never exercised, I'm going to need 30 minutes or 180 minutes a week. It can be overwhelming. It can be self-defeating for that person. So research also says you can take that 30 minutes a day and you can break it up into 2 or 3 sessions. That's a little bit more doable, right?
Yes.
So I'm having them to start. I try to meet my patients in every area of health right where they are, and then we move from there. So honestly, sometimes they start out with 5 or 10 minutes and they improve up on that over time.
Yeah, yeah. You know, Sharon, I really have been listening to you and I love your approach because it's human.
Yeah.
I see that you really care a lot about your patients. You and I, we haven't met yet. I'm in Dallas, you are in Maryland, and it was actually Dr. Terry that recommended me. She was like, I invited her for a weight loss talk show on weight loss program, and she kept just saying, you have to bring Sharon on your show. But I see why she was saying that, because, you know, I think it was last year I did a talk show on the reality of Black women that are pregnant, what goes behind the scene for Black women being pregnant in the United States. The kind of treatment that we get sometimes.
It's horrifying.
Yeah. The amount of Black women dying while giving birth. Why? Because of negligence. Because of the color of our skin. People don't want to talk about it, but we got to address it. And you know, during that talk show, it was one thing that I kept telling women. We have to be proactive. We have to go to the source. There is no excuse. If you go see a doctor and you don't feel it, go see for a second and third opinion.
Yeah.
Because you are the patient, you are paying that doctor. And don't hesitate to speak up. Do your homework. Yes, doctors are great. They will tell you everything. But please make time to go online and do your research. Look for side effects. Is what the doctor is recommended as procedure for me? Is it a good procedure for me in my condition? And as women also, and I'm sure, Sharon, you will attest of that, we should learn to know our body.
Yes.
But many of us today, we don't care. Many women are so busy just focusing on the wrong stuff than getting to know themselves better. That way, if something is wrong with your body, you can tell. And then, based on that, if you see a doctor and they're telling you something and you don't feel it, you can feel confident telling that, no, I don't think so. I'm going for a second and third opinion. But I really, really enjoy listening to you because I can tell you truly care for your patient. I'm not saying that just to please you, but I can feel it. And I'm sure our viewers also will feel it.
Okay.
I am the type who don't like to take medication. Not that I will not take it if I have to, but I also know that many of those medications have side effects. Sharon, for people like me, are there alternative treatment like the natural and holistic treatment of that diabetes?
Well, you know what's interesting? I get asked that a lot. And the truth is, if I can just get people to exercise and change up their diet, well, let me give you some statistics. There was a study done on prediabetes. So that's kind of the precursor to diabetes. Research says you have prediabetes. If you do nothing to actively work to try to reverse it, within 2 to 5 years, you have full diabetes, right? Wow. So here's what they learned from these studies. If a person just lose 5 to 7% of their body weight, exercise for 30 minutes at 5 days a week, they can reverse their the prediabetes and put their blood sugar back within normal range. So it's estimated if you lose about 10%, that's not a ton of weight, right? That a lot of times the doctors are telling you you lose these crazy amount of weight when literally a small amount can make the difference. And then being more active. So when we talk about what are some alternatives, that's where I start first. Because let's face it, in the Black community, we want a quick fix. What can I take? Can I take a pill to fix it? And the truth is, a lot of the simple things you can do, lifestyle is going to make the biggest difference. Yes, we know a little apple cider vinegar or a little cinnamon may help lower the blood sugar slightly, but it's never going to do what exercise can do and what a little weight loss can do.
Yeah, absolutely. We are almost at the end of this talk show. Sharon, do you have any word for our Black community specifically? Do you think there is hope in our Black community to reverse this deadly trend of diabetes in the future?
Yeah, I'm always hopeful, right?
Yeah.
Hopeful and prayerful. I spent a lot of time working with different organizations. I belong to a mega church here in this area. I'm over their entire health ministry, so I'm able to get through to a lot of people in this area. But what I'm hopeful in this area, but I'm concerned in other areas, particularly down south and in Texas and the areas where they don't have all the access in some of these rural areas. Those are the areas we're most concerned about. And how do we get to those people? Now, where I am hopeful of is now what we talked about, being able to go online and do these classes.
Yeah.
I have people in my classes from around the nation. That wasn't possible before when we were doing in-house. So all of this is changing the game a little bit. But where the problem comes in at is who's there to do the education and to do the training. What a lot of people don't know is the average physician has had about 1 month of nutrition education in medical school. It is not their area of specialty. It has nothing to do with their competency as a physician. It's just not their area of specialty. So a lot of times we're going to them for nutritional advice and weight loss advice and diabetes treatment advice, when reality is it's not their area of specialty. So that makes it difficult too as well. So I always challenge my physicians. I have over 100 physicians who refer into me to make sure you refer them into someone who can actually give them those lifestyle, help them with the lifestyle changes, right? And not just automatically go to the medications, and give us an opportunity to rise to the occasion. Because a lot of times, just like with women and the issue of not getting the best care during delivery, another issue comes up, and most of the care when we're talking about with Blacks when it comes to our health, not just African Americans, but Blacks from around the world, is that there's this idea that we're really not going to do what we're supposed to. And that's not fair. Because I believe knowledge is power. If you give, I've watched it day in and day out. You give them the information and you allow them to rise to the occasion. Don't just assume that they're not going to do it because they haven't done it before. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sharon. And by the way, I will make sure to have all your contact information at the top of the video for both episode 1 and episode 2 of today, so that people can reach out to you and they can have the best treatment. Definitely, I really enjoy having you on this set, and I hope to have you back in the future to just keep on doing what we know best, which is empowering again our Black community and just pushing each other's. Be our sisters and brothers keeper, so we can do better, and we can do better.
Absolutely.
And even though diabetes is responsible for an increasing number of deaths in the Black community, there is good news, like Sharon said. Diabetes can be avoided through certain lifestyle habits. Even if you have this condition, the most common type diabetes 2 can be reversed through your lifestyle choice. Sharon, I want to thank you again for your time and for just being with us again one more time.
Thank you. It was absolutely my pleasure.
Sure. Precious women of valor, precious men of valor, dear viewers, thank you for staying with us, and we will see you next week, Friday, June 16 at 2:30 p.m. Washington, D.C. time for another edition of our